guys. Hey, I just wanted to make a quick video about keeping good habits because it's something that I've struggled with a lot, and I think a lot of other people struggle with as well. And when I explain this, I think it'll make a lot more sense. But basically, there's two zones. Well, there's three zones here, right? There's the high growth zone, right? This is like when you're really doing what I'm not going to write actually because I have to write there eventually later. But there's the high growth zone, which is this area, and that's when you're going past what you've normally done before in the past. So like throughout this example, I'm going to use working out just because it's something that's universally, understood and known. But so this would be like, you've been fit before, but now you're like running triathlons and stuff like that, or doing triathlons, right? And then you have the low zone, which is like you really fell off, right? Like you just stopped working out, stopped taking care of your diet, stopped taking care of your health, and you're in a really low period. Most people live within this little zone. I don't have a name for the zone, but that's the zone that they live in, and I'll explain to you how and why. And when you see it, you're going to realize how accurate it is. So basically, let's start with a moment which is I call an oh shit line, which is the moment when you look at yourself or you realize like you have a lot of work to do. You're kind of at the low end of the spectrum for what you're capable of, right? And we'll use fitness. Again, let's say you realize you're a couple pounds overweight, or you're not as strong as you used to be, whatever it is, you couldn't run, whatever it is. You get to this moment, you realize right here, you have some work to do. So what do? You start a diet, you start going to the gym, you start working out, you start running, etc. And as you're doing that, right, you're consistent with it, and you eventually bring yourself from the low state to the higher state, right? And you get physically stronger, you feel better, you look better, your skin's glowing, whatever it is, right? And once you get to that point, that like desired destination, I guess, you start to forget, a lot of people, I'm not saying you specifically, people start to forget about the important things that they did, the little things that they did to get to that point, right? And so like, let's say in the example, you continue working out, but you're not eating as well, right? So you're going to the gym, but you're having donuts and soda and sugar and whatever. So what happens is you think you're maintaining your state, but in reality, what's actually happening is you're going back down, right? And when you start eating all the garbage, eventually you might stop working out altogether, right? And then that just kind of accelerates that downward trend. Eventually, you'll hit the point where you realize again, oh snap, like I'm not as, I fell off, you know what I mean? So what happens? Then you build your routine again. You get back on the diet, you go back to the gym, and the same thing happens several times, right? And that's usually what happens with people, right? They realize that they have a problem that they have to fix, they fix it, they think things are fine, they don't realize what's actually happening is that they're actually going back down, and then they realize that something's wrong, and then they put the systems and the habits back in place to go build again, right? And then this trend, basically what you're seeing right here, is what most people's lives look like, right? It never really goes above into the high growth zone, but it never really goes into the low zone. Sometimes it'll go into the low zone, but people will pretty quickly get out of it. Or sometimes it'll go to the high zone, but it'll drop right back out, right? So that's what most people go through, right? And this is an example of keeping a good habit for some period of time, but then falling off too fast and for too long that you're never actually able to get into the high growth zone, right? So that's the first example, right? The second example is very similar. I'm just going to erase this just to make it easy to see. Okay, so then the second thing, and I'm explaining like the difference between the two as far as how to actually achieve the goals is, I have my notebook right over here, but make sure I don't forget anything. But basically, the second line, right? Someone who's highly self-aware of their own growth, and someone who has the systems in place to make sure that they don't fall off so hard and for so long, will have a different growth line. It's not going to be a perfect growth line, but it's going to be a little bit different. It'll look something like this. So they'll grow, and they'll hit, a good level, right? Like, a satisfactory level of achievement, and they might start to fall off a little bit, right? But the difference is they know they're falling off here, right? They realize that they're not doing the things that they they were doing to get to the point that they got to, right? So the correction is quick, and the drop isn't as bad. So then what happens is they go back and they push harder than they were before, and they continue going on that little journey. Again, they might drop off a little bit, and things are going to happen. Whatever it is, life happens, people get satisfied, you get comfortable, or you don't like being constantly uncomfortable. It gets like a constant routine gets mundane, whatever the reason is. This little drop off happens with everyone, right? But the difference between the first person or the first example and this example right now is that this example, you're more aware of what's going on. So again, this is really the trend. And then it kind of just looks like this. You guys kind of get the point, realization, right? So I guess the question is, right, the question to answer is, how do you make sure that these drop-offs are smaller, they don't last as long, and that the growth periods, right, are longer and more sustained, right? Because overall, that provides you with like you're going up and to the right, basically, overall. And that's ultimately what you want. So there's really two things that I think make this possible. Number one is being self-aware, right? Like, if you're not self-aware, you can't catch the drop-offs. But it's easy to forget about those things. Like, it's easy to forget about being self-aware. So the second thing that I think is the most important way to achieve growth like this is to, I'm gonna write some notes over here. What am I gonna do? Here. The second most important thing is setting up systems. So, like, for example, I personally have a morning routine and a nighttime routine that I follow pretty religiously. Like, sometimes I'll have these moments, right? But for the most part, I follow that system really well. And what I do is, in the morning, I have the things that I need to get done, right? And in the evening, basically, if you've heard me talk about the 4 stimulants, in the morning I work on 3 of them, which is, intellectual stimulation, I read, physical stimulation, I work out, and spiritual stimulation, I like pray and meditate, right? And then at night, what I'll do is I will reflect, right? I'll literally journal, I'll look back at my day, and I'll figure out, okay, like, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? How can I make today better for tomorrow, right? One of the things that I'll journal, I'll reflect, and these 2 alone will help me tremendously in becoming more self-aware. I'm writing like you can't see it, but I'm writing in an awkward position, so it's kind of hard to write in a legible form. And that's really it. I don't want to make this video too long because I wanted it to be like educational, informational, and slightly helpful. But really, it's 2 different things. It's being self-aware and having systems in place. And that the second point that I want to make about systems is, when you don't want to do the work, systems help you get things done, right? Like, you need systems in your life. The same way, like, everything in the world basically operates off systems. Your life operates off a system too. And the better, more efficient your systems are, the better and, more smoothly your life will run. And as far as keeping good habits, being self-aware to catch the times that you're falling off will help you tremendously, because these fall-off zones won't be that long. They'll be like maybe 3, 4, 5 days, if that, maybe even shorter, maybe 2 days. But your growth zones, your times that you're growing, will be significantly longer. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I hope you enjoyed this. I hope, actually, let me say this. If you have any questions, comment them in the comment section, and I'll try to respond. I'm sure I missed something, but I'll respond to questions in the comment section. All right, guys, talk to you soon.